The day we got engaged, my father-in-law said I was a gold digger who'd ruin his daughter's life. He told her I was a liar, warned the family about me, and tried to cancel the wedding. Then he crashed our rehearsal dinner yelling. 48 hours later, he got news that shut him up for good. I read it. I'm Milo, 34M, and I never thought I'd be the type of guy to post something like this. But here we are. This has been eating at me for months now, and I guess writing it all out is my way of processing everything. If you've ever dealt with an overbearing in-law, especially one who wears a mask of charm in public and saves the venom for private moments, then you might relate. Let me start with this. I love my fiancée, Isla, 32F, more than anything. We met 5 years ago through a mutual friend at a birthday party, hit it off immediately, and have been glued at the hip ever since. She's smart, kind, sharp-witted, and fiercely loyal, everything I ever wanted in a partner. When I proposed last winter, it felt like the most natural next step. We've been through some heavy stuff together already, and I really thought we had the full support of our families. Well, mostly. I'd met Isla's parents several times before we got engaged. Her mom, Lana, is quiet but warm in her own way. She's the type who shows affection by packing you leftovers or asking if you need socks. We never had any issues. But her dad, Julian? Julian is a different story. He's the kind of man who walks into a room and expects everyone to look at him. He's got that polished businessman demeanor, tailored suits, just the right amount of cologne, a voice that carries, but there's a coldness behind his eyes that's hard to ignore once you see it. At first, I chalked it up to protective dad stuff. He asked me the usual questions when Isla first introduced me. What do you do? Where did you go to school? What are your intentions? That sort of thing. He was civil, polite even, but something always felt off. Like he was performing. Testing. At the time, I was working 2 jobs, one at a local architecture firm and the other tutoring high school students in math on weekends. I wasn't making 6 figures, but I paid my bills and was building a portfolio. Isla believed in me. She always saw the potential even when I doubted myself. Julian, though? He saw a man with a used car and no trust fund. And he didn't hide his disapproval as well as he thought. There were subtle comments at first. Things like, "So you're still renting?" or "Interesting choice of career, must be rewarding in a passionate kind of way." It was always couched in polite phrasing, but the message was clear. I wasn't good enough for his daughter. Isla brushed it off. "That's just how he is," she'd say. "He was the same way when my sister dated a musician in college. He gets over it." But he didn't get over it. If anything, he got more hostile. The first real red flag came when I was invited to one of their extended family dinners. This was about a year before the engagement. It was a big gathering, cousins, aunts, grandparents, the whole deal. Everyone was pleasant, making small talk, passing around plates. Then Julian made a toast. He went on about the importance of family, of building something real, and how some people come from backgrounds that make them comfortable with mediocrity, but that doesn't mean we should lower our standards. The room got very quiet after that. Isla looked down at her plate. I laughed it off in the moment, trying not to cause a scene, but the message was loud and clear. After that dinner, Isla pulled him aside. I didn't hear what was said, but she came back looking frustrated. "He says he didn't mean anything by it," she muttered. "But I'm sorry. That was out of line." Still, I didn't want to be the guy who came between a daughter and her dad. So I gave Julian space. I showed up when invited, kept conversations light, made sure I was never anything less than respectful. Then came the proposal. It was quiet, personal, just the 2 of us on a cold, clear evening in the park where we first met. Isla cried and said yes, and for a while, it was perfect. The first person she called? Her mom. The second? Her dad. She put him on speaker without telling me. He didn't congratulate us. Didn't even pause. The first words out of his mouth were, "Isla, don't be impulsive. We need to talk." She froze. "Dad, what?" "I'm not being impulsive. We've been together 5 years." There was a long silence. Then, "I hope you know what you're doing. This isn't a fairy tale, Isla. Don't let emotions blind you." We hung up shortly after. She tried to shake it off, but I could tell it got to her. And that was the beginning of what I now think of as the campaign. It started slowly. Isla would get calls from relatives she hadn't heard from in ages, an aunt here, a cousin there, each one awkwardly expressing concern about the speed of our engagement or asking if she'd thought about a prenup. One even said, "Your dad said you're being manipulated." Manipulated. By me. When she confronted her dad, he admitted it. I'm just looking out for you, he said. It's my job. Except that wasn't all he was doing. He started telling people I'd exaggerated my resume, that I wasn't really working with the firm I listed, just some temporary contract work, that I was targeting Isla because I wanted stability, a better lifestyle, that I'd never make it, and that Isla would end up supporting me. It would have been laughable if it weren't so effective. Some of Isla's cousins started pulling back. Her godmother, who had always liked me, suddenly stopped replying to messages. Her older brother, Owen, who'd always been distant but cordial, told Isla over coffee that she shouldn't rush into anything with someone who doesn't understand how we do things. And then came the night of the rehearsal dinner. I stood in the doorway of the dining room, the soft tap of my shoes against the polished floor the only sound for a moment. The air felt thick, like the tension had been woven into it, stitch by bitter stitch over the years. They were all seated, just like always. My mother at the head of the table, perfectly composed, napkin folded in her lap. My father to her left, flipping through his phone as if the world existed solely to entertain him. And George, always early, always smug, already had a plate in front of him. Their heads turned at once when I walked in. A flicker of surprise passed through my mom's eyes, quickly masked by that icy smile she wore when company was over. My father barely raised his brow. George gave a sarcastic little clap. You actually showed up, he said, as if I were late to my own punishment. I didn't answer. I moved slowly, taking the seat at the far end of the table. My seat. The one no one ever offered to pull out for me. The one that wobbled slightly because no one bothered to fix it. Dinner was already served. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, some kind of salad with too many olives. My mother's version of home cooking. She always liked to pretend we were the picture of a traditional family, but she never once cooked without the help of someone she underpaid and criticized behind their back. I placed the envelope next to my plate and waited. My mom glanced at it, then looked back at me. What's that supposed to be? A letter, I said simply. She narrowed her eyes. If this is some dramatic stunt, it's not, I said. Calm, even. I wasn't here to yell. I was done raising my voice for people who never heard me when I whispered. George rolled his eyes. Seriously? Did you write us a love letter? Or is this one of your business things again? My father snorted. You, and that little side hustle. You should have been smart like your brother. George knows how to take real risks. I tilted my head. You mean the kind of risks that burn through half your retirement and most of my college savings? My mother's face tightened. That was family money. We helped him because he's going to carry this family's name forward. I looked between them. 3 people who had rehearsed this script so many times they didn't even hear how cruel it sounded. I let the silence settle for a moment, let them grow uncomfortable in it. I didn't come here to argue, I said. I came to let you know this will be the last dinner like this. I've sold the company. My father straightened. Your little project? I nodded. Yes. And I did well. Very well. George scoffed. Oh, come on. What? You made enough for a vacation. I pushed the envelope toward the center of the table. Open it. They hesitated. Then my mother picked it up and slipped a manicured finger under the seal. Her eyes scanned the contents, first quickly, then again, slower. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. My father leaned over to see. This can't be right. George grabbed it from her and read it. No way. No, you didn't. But I had. I had grown something they laughed at into something they now couldn't ignore. They had scoffed when I worked weekends, sneered when I said I couldn't make it to George's launch parties. They'd mocked me every time I said no to their advice. I had been invisible. The spare. The one they kept around for balance, not because they cared. You sold it for this much, my mother finally said, voice thin. Yes, I said, folding my hands neatly. And I bought something else with it. George's brow furrowed. What? Your company, I said, turning to him. The one Mom and Dad put everything into to keep afloat. The one with the warehouse that hasn't passed an audit in 2 years. The one you've been begging for new investors for. I'm the new owner now. They stared at me like I had spoken a different language. That's not, George started, but my father interrupted. You bought his company? Why? To save him. No, I said. To take control. So I never have to be looked down on again. So I can finally stop being the one left out while you all pretend you're building a legacy. I'm the legacy now. The silence was sharp. My mother blinked rapidly, her composure starting to crack. You did this to us? No, I said, standing. I did this for me. I gave you all the chance to see me, to believe in me, and you didn't. Now you'll have to watch what happens when someone you dismissed stops needing your approval. And with that, I walked out, not with a dramatic slam of the door, but with calm steps that echoed through the house. Behind me, I heard nothing. No apologies. No excuses. Just silence. And it was finally enough. I hadn't spoken to any of them for a long time. The silence was intentional, a boundary I placed not out of spite, but necessity. But I still watched. Not to gloat, at least, not entirely, but to make sure they felt it. To ensure that for once, I was no longer the background noise to their conversations, but the headline. George's company, my company now, was already changing. I didn't fire him right away. That would have been too merciful, too sudden. Instead, I moved carefully, methodically, the way he used to toy with my confidence, one smug remark at a time. First, I called for an internal audit. One George had postponed for over a year. He had no idea how disorganized things were, mostly because he never really paid attention to the details. That was someone else's job, someone he underpaid and overworked. That employee now had my full support. I tripled her budget, moved her to a better office, and gave her full clearance. Her name was Erica, and for the first time in months, she walked into work smiling. Then came the restructuring. George was still technically CEO, but I hired someone just above him, an executive director of operations, someone sharp, experienced, and quietly ruthless in their precision. She had a reputation for cleaning house. I knew that. George didn't. One by one, his decisions were overturned. His projects were reviewed and frozen. His meetings were now attended by someone who took notes, my notes, and followed up with detailed feedback. Most of it was corrective. Some of it was humiliating. George called me 4 times the third week. I didn't answer. My parents weren't silent either. My mother sent me a message the next Sunday. It was dressed up as concern. Just checking in. We haven't heard from you. Are you okay? But the subtext was always control. That was her real language. She never asked, only expected. I didn't respond. Then my father sent an email. No subject line, no greeting. Just, this thing with George is going too far. Call me. I didn't. And then came the letter. Handwritten. Folded carefully, like a token from someone with class and poise. Except the contents were anything but. I don't know what you think you're doing, but you're jeopardizing your brother's future and this family's name. You've made your point. Now it's time to let George run things again. He was always meant for this. You're not. Please don't ruin everything we've built because you want to prove something. Think of us before you make your next move. Signed, Mom. I sat with that letter for a while. Read it again and again. Not once did it say they were proud of me. Not once did it ask why I did what I did. Not once did it show even a flicker of accountability. They hadn't changed. But I had. So I made my next move. I visited the company headquarters on a Monday morning. George was in his office, still his, for now. I walked in unannounced. His assistant started to stop me, but I just held up my badge. It carried more weight now. He looked up, startled. You? Yes, I said. Me. He stood, palms on the desk. I don't know what game you're playing, but you've embarrassed me in front of the board. You've made me look like a joke. You did that all on your own, I said calmly. I just stopped protecting you. He scoffed, moving around the desk like he could intimidate me by standing closer. Do you want me gone? Fine. Just say it. I don't want you gone, I said. Not yet. I want you to earn being gone. He blinked. What does that mean? It means, I said slowly, you'll stay until the company has stabilized under the new team. You'll attend every meeting. You'll sit through every evaluation. You'll watch as each of your bad decisions is unraveled in front of you. And when we're done, I'll release a statement saying you've stepped down voluntarily due to burnout. You wouldn't dare. Oh, I would, I said. And I will. Because that's what you and Mom and Dad taught me, isn't it? Control the narrative. Maintain the image. So I will. And you'll thank me for it. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. That was happening to him more often lately. He was used to being the loudest one in the room. He never thought someone quieter could hold more power. I walked to the door, then paused. Oh, and I've arranged a lunch meeting with Mom and Dad next week. Company related. They'll be told it's urgent. You think they'll listen to you now? They'll have to, I said. They're shareholders, but not majority. That's me now. And then I left him there, surrounded by glass walls he could no longer hide behind. The restaurant was their choice, of course. A place they considered classy, though it always felt more like a stage than a space to eat. The kind of place where the menus had no prices and the waitstaff was trained to greet my parents by name. They liked being recognized. They liked being important. I arrived first. The hostess offered a polite smile and led me to the corner booth, their booth. I sat alone for nearly 10 minutes, listening to the faint clink of silverware and murmurs of conversations all around. I knew they would arrive late. They always did, as a statement. When they finally swept in, my mother was in a pearl-colored blouse and a pressed blazer, her hair perfectly styled. My father wore his usual expression of quiet judgment, like the world never quite met his expectations. Always early, my mother said as she sat across from me. You were like that as a child too, anxious to impress. I didn't respond. I just closed the folder in front of me and placed it neatly on the table. My father sat beside her and adjusted his sleeve cuffs before speaking. Let's get to the point. We don't have time for drama. That's good, I said, because this isn't about drama. It's about direction. My mother's brow tightened. Direction of what? The company. She tilted her head, feigning confusion. You mean George's company? I looked at her evenly. My company now? Legally. Structurally. Practically. She let out a short breath. You've made your little power move. Congratulations. But let's be clear, we helped George build that company from nothing. We invested. We gave him the connections. The name. You came in after everything was already established. My father nodded. You inherited something strong. Don't act like you created it. I folded my hands, voice steady. I know exactly what I inherited. A house built on uneven ground. Flashy on the outside, hollow underneath. I'm here to rebuild it. Properly. They didn't like that. My mother leaned in. So what? You plan to turn it into some quaint little boutique business? Like that silly project you used to run from your room? I smiled slightly. You mean the project you laughed at? The one you told people was just a phase? That silly project funded the purchase of your son's company. Her lips parted, but no words came out. My father looked like he'd been slapped with silence. I continued. That business now employs over 50 people. Quietly. Efficiently. And yes, it's successful. More successful than you ever bothered to notice. My mother straightened, trying to reclaim the tone. That doesn't change the fact that George has a future in leadership. He just needs guidance. From us. George, I said, has been under your guidance for years. Look where it got him. I'm not here to argue with you. I'm here to inform you. My father stiffened. Inform us of what? You're no longer decision makers. You're investors. Silent ones. He laughed, a short, bitter sound. You think you can shut us out of a business we helped fund? Yes, I said plainly. Because I bought out your voting shares. Legally. Quietly. Over the last 3 months. Their eyes widened. Finally, they understood. This wasn't a tantrum or a statement. It was a strategy. My mother's voice lost its sharp edge, replaced by something colder. You've been planning this for months? I nodded. Ever since you took my savings to fund George's expansion without even telling me. You thought I'd forget. That I'd be grateful just to be acknowledged. But I learned something from you. How to use silence. How to observe. How to move when no one's watching. My father's jaw tensed. You don't understand how this works. Business isn't personal. No, I said. But family should be. They sat in silence. Then I placed the folder in front of them and opened it. Inside were their official new titles, non-executive shareholders. No authority. No influence. Just names on paper. My mother read the first page, her hands trembling slightly. I've arranged quarterly reports, I added. You'll get your financial summaries. Your dividends. But you won't be involved in day-to-day decisions. That includes George's role. She looked up, eyes flashing. You're cutting him out. No, I said. He's doing that all on his own. My father pushed the folder back toward me. You're making a mistake. Maybe, I said, gently closing it. But at least it's my mistake to make. I stood, smoothing my coat. Thank you for meeting me. I'm sure your driver's waiting outside. My mother spoke, quieter now. Why are you doing this? I met her eyes. Because all my life, you made me feel small so George could feel big. You turned your backs on me, mocked my efforts, and when I found success, you tried to take credit for it. This isn't revenge. It's justice. It's balance. And then I left them sitting there in that booth, still dressed like royalty, still believing they deserved the throne. They were licking their wounds in silence, exactly how they taught me to. But I knew better than to mistake their quiet for defeat. My parents had built their lives on appearances. They wouldn't challenge me publicly, not yet. Not while they could still pretend they were in control. Still pretend they were respected figures in the business community. Let them pretend. Let them stew in rooms where no one applauded when they walked in anymore. Let them whisper behind closed doors, wondering where it all went wrong. I didn't need them to admit it. I had the documents, the signatures, the freedom, and more than anything, I had peace. George, of course, was a different story. He didn't take the news well. He tried calling first, dozens of times, leaving voicemails filled with wounded pride and half-formed threats. When I didn't answer, he resorted to what he always did best, deflection. He stormed into the office on a Monday morning, demanding to see me like he still had a title that meant something. Security politely told him he'd need to schedule an appointment with my assistant. He left red-faced, muttering insults under his breath. A week later, I got a formal letter from his attorney asking for reconsideration of his demotion. I responded through my legal team. He was welcome to apply for an entry-level position, just like everyone else. He didn't. He vanished from the company after that, too proud to accept reality. I heard through the grapevine he was sulking at home, making wild claims that I'd stolen his legacy. But the truth was simple. He never built anything. He only ever inherited. And he expected the world to keep handing things to him. As for me, I took the corner office. Not out of vanity. Not out of spite. But because it had been theirs, and now it was mine. The room was sterile at first. All glass and chrome. The kind of space meant to intimidate. I stripped it down slowly. Removed the cold portraits of my parents they'd hung on the far wall. Replaced them with sketches from local artists. I brought in a plant that needed real care, one that would only grow with light and attention. It was symbolic. Quietly, much like I had been. On the day I held the first staff-wide meeting, I stood before over 100 people, some old faces, some new. Some who had once overlooked me, and some who had been overlooked just like I had. I told them the truth, that the company was changing, that our values were no longer about name recognition or family favor, but about integrity, effort, and skill. I saw the disbelief in some faces, but I also saw hope. Real, steady hope. Later that afternoon, I sat at my desk and opened a small wooden box. It was something I'd kept hidden for years, an old ledger from my first small business. The one I'd run out of my bedroom while my parents laughed behind my back. Inside were handwritten entries, order lists, and the first few faded invoices I'd printed on recycled paper. I remembered staying up until 2 a.m., carefully packaging items, double-checking addresses, and writing thank you notes by hand, because I couldn't afford custom labels back then. I ran a finger down the column of the very first page. There it was. Customer number 1. Total, $8.75. And next to it, I'd scribbled something in my teenage handwriting. Someday, this will matter. I closed the box and smiled, not with bitterness, but with pride. They had mocked that version of me, dismissed her, undermined her. But she was the one who did the work. She was the one who refused to let their voices become her truth. She was the reason I was here. And they would never take that away. In the months that followed, my parents tried to recover their image. They attended charity events, gave carefully worded interviews, claimed they were stepping back to allow new leadership to flourish. But the truth had a way of leaking through. Whispers of what really happened spread quietly at conferences and luncheons. Colleagues stopped calling as often. Invitations stopped arriving. And for the first time, their names carried less weight. They'd spent decades crafting a legacy on paper. And I had erased it, with results. Not revenge. Not cruelty. Just calm, firm correction. Justice in a quiet voice. One evening, long after the office had emptied, I stood by the window, watching the lights of the city flicker on below. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one they tried to silence, the one they didn't believe in. She had waited a long time for this moment, not for applause, not for recognition, just for the silence to finally belong to her. And now it did. The story was finished, and I had written every word myself. Sometimes, I still wonder. I didn't scream. I didn't destroy anything. I didn't raise my voice or humiliate them in public. I simply took back what was mine. I stood up to them in the only language they respected, results. I built something they couldn't touch. I protected what I worked for. And I walked away without looking back. But now that it's all said and done, I can't help but ask, does that make me the villain? I didn't forgive them. I didn't give them a second chance. I didn't let them explain or excuse what they did for years. I let them feel the consequences they always avoided. So, am I the bad one here? Was I wrong to take over and push them out after everything they did? Was I too harsh for not giving them a chance to make things right? Or was this just justice, finally, and fairly served? Let me know what you think. I can take it. What would you do if your future in-laws tried to sabotage your life and then showed up screaming at your rehearsal dinner? Let us know in the comments. Was the revenge justified, or did it go too far? And don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss another story.